Welcome everybody, this is a live taping of episode 43 of One with the Films, so we're going to go ahead and get kicked off. This episode is titled Now Kiss, and it's about Enemy Mine, 1985 film. So, and there's Marley in chat saying g'day, so boom, here we go. Ready when you are, okay?
All right. By the way, I saw that little transition you did there, and nice.
Yeah, I've been working.
All I gotta say. Hey, listen, you do a good job. All right. 30 years ago, Alpha Quadrant was low on fuel, supplies, and hope. Evil marauders known as the Tate Slander dominated the region. Only one thing could save the whole system. Monsters. That's right. Now, after a brief stint in the desert of Kalazona, two unlikely people would become begrudging roommates, part-time lovers on the down low, but looking for something deeper to become friends, and decided to better the galaxy by podcasting.
Beautiful.
And now we've yet to know if it worked, but I'm sure it has, and everything is at peace, and no one is fighting ever. We solved it. However, in the meantime, it's time for you to meet these fabulous podcasters. Welcome to One with the Films. I'm your favorite fruity spaceman and the baddest of batches, your soup of the day, Movie K-Man Third, also known as K, also known as Keegan, and I am with my dirtiest little magnet, the crumb to my cake, the Drac that's down to Naff. It is, in fact, the one, the only Naff. On second thought, hey, baby, do you want to introduce yourself?
No, stop asking me. You always do a better job, so I'm happy with that. That works for me.
You know, that's fair. That's fair.
That's fair.
And you've been doing a fair amount of the introductions on your own for a little bit now. So
and I've been missing you. You've been missed sorely. I've needed someone who could gas me up more than I could gas myself. So thank you.
Hey, listen, I got you. I'm going to gas you up like the car that Chris is sitting in. And
speaking of which,
we are not alone. We're here with an incredible creator destined to get us off this stinking rock with his incredible takes and his even better cosplays. You know him, you love him, the armored entertainer, the English icon, the one, the only, Star Wars and beyond, also known as Chris. Care to introduce yourself, pal? Thank you so much for coming on the show.
How's it going? What an intro that was. The English icon. I mean, I'll take it, but like, I don't know whether everybody else will. That's good. But I appreciate that. Thanks.
As we said,
think of one more iconic English person.
It's like 8 o'clock in the morning. You've got a coffee. You're in your car in a Star Wars hoodie. We can see the frosting on the window. I don't know what's more iconic in English than that, mate. Like that is all around a win.
I mean, your neighbors are currently thinking this is very iconic at this present moment.
Oh yeah.
So.
Oh yeah.
We got some curtain twitchers definitely wondering what I'm doing currently.
Yeah, literally, they're going to be real confused when they figure out what it is. They're like, is he doing heroin in his car? No, he's talking about a movie, like a nerd. But yeah, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us, Chris. If you guys are listening live as well, we're at a pretty odd time today across 3 different time zones. It's very different to what we usually do, but we're bending our backs to get Chris on the podcast today and have this chat together. So thank you so much, Chris, for getting up early for today. Thank you so much, Kay, for staying up late today. Thank you so much, Nathan, for not having an afternoon nap. You know, that I've got the hardest job of the 3 of us. But for the listeners, whether you're listening live or on demand, you can find One with the Films anywhere you get your podcasts. So we're available on Apple, Spotify, live and on demand on YouTube as well. So you can check us out there each week, and the whole backlog's there too. So be sure to stick around to the end as well. A couple of announcements leading into the next few episodes and into the end of the season. So
and you're not going to want to miss those. Those are going to be really important ones for you guys to properly understand what's coming down the pipe.
Beautiful.
Absolutely. But which brings us to the whole reason we're sitting here with coffees and things there. So Naf, why the hell are we up this late, this early, or this mid-afternoon?
I mean, it's 7 p.m. Yeah, it's nighttime for me.
Okay.
But if you're a long-time listener and you're coming back, you'd be very familiar with what we do here. This is an episode of the Weekly Watch List. It's a segment we run on this podcast where you get to hang out in our little corner of the internet, and we essentially help you work through your pesky watch list. Or what I've found actually happens is we extend your watch list a little bit, because most of you guys are out here going, hey, I need to watch all of the classics, and we're going, no, watch this 1985 film that made like $3 back in 1985, and hopefully you enjoy it as much as we do. Like it's our favorite little spot, because we get to watch stuff that we generally wouldn't ever, and get to kind of gush about stuff that other people love, as opposed to just kind of reiterating the same things. So if you like the idea of some new films to watch, not new, but like new to you, you can come and check us out. Most of our episodes are based on films that you potentially haven't seen before, and you can always come in and check those episodes out, and then check the movie out afterwards or beforehand, or whatever you like. So welcome. We're so happy to have you here. We love you so much. So the film. Let's go ahead and reveal this one. We've got Chris with us today. We've talked a little bit about it at the start, but for those that have just tuned in, Chris, do you want to let us know what film you've chosen for us today?
So I chose a film that I grew up with called Enemy Mine.
Yeah, it was actually very different to what I kind of expected it to be. When you messaged it to me, I don't know, I thought it was going to be like this, like political thriller for some reason. That's what I expected. And it's funny, I went on the trivia page.
That's exactly what this is.
I mean, from a certain point of view, and he's very much giving Obi-Wan in half of this film. But I went on IMDb, and they were saying that when they had the name of the film, the studio wanted to add a subplot that involved the enemies having a mine, because they thought Western audiences wouldn't understand the title unless there was actually a mine in it. And congratulations, Keegan, the American education system.
I endorse our education system. They were very valid to think that would be necessary.
Yeah, well, I've put together some fun facts about the film, so let's give you guys a bit of insight on what this film is and some stuff about it, and then we'll dive into the conversation a little bit too. So the film is based.
About it. Yeah, go do it.
You know what? I will. Thank you. I appreciate.
Yeah, man,
I appreciate.
You do it.
Fucking bitch.
Do it.
So based on a 1979 novella written by Barry Longyear that premiered in the September edition of Isaac Asimov's science fiction magazine, the story was adapted to film by writer Edward Khmara and released in 1985. It stars Dennis Quaid and Lewis Gossett Jr., Lewis having to be in a makeup chair for upwards of 3 hours each day they filmed, and that's very evident, which we'll get into conversation about later when we talk about the detailed prosthetics. His entire body is covered for the portrayal of his character, and it's brilliant. Most of the film was shot at the Bavaria Film Studios in Munich, but the volcano and sort of lava landscapes and that green lake that is there at the start of the film, that's actually a real location. It was shot on one of the Canary Islands off of Morocco at the Montañas del Fuego National Park. Some of those sets are still being shown on the studio tours in Munich as well, so if you do a studio tour at Bavaria Film, you'll actually see some of the stuff that they filmed on, which is pretty cool. Panned by critics at the time of release, the film currently has a 6.8 out of 10 on IMDb from 51,000 reviews and a 3.3 out of 5 on Letterboxd, with only 4.8k likes and 39 fans. So it definitely missed the big splash that the studio was probably expecting to come after that little old indie movie that spawned a multi-billion-dollar franchise only a few years earlier. The film was planned with a $17 million budget, but it ended up costing $40 million and was considered a box office failure, earning back barely 12. Oddly enough, the film became successful in the former Soviet Union, where it became the first Western sci-fi film to be shown in Russian theaters. It started off being directed by Richard Longcrane, but was shortly replaced with Wolfgang Petersen after the studio spent $9 million for him to shoot in Iceland and deliver poor quality dailies that they said resembled Earth too much and looked like a cheap horror film with Gossett's costume as their like kind of monster of the week. Wolfgang was unsure about taking on the role. He actually said he wasn't a fan of the Star Wars type science fiction, but when he read the script and realized there was something deeper here, he said he wanted to do it. He couldn't, though, because of scheduling conflicts, and the studio then offered to pause production until he finished working on the never-ending story because they wanted him that bad, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Incredible.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, that kind of explains a couple things
it does,
that we'll
right?
probably get into.
They basically scrapped and started from scratch, too. I'm really interested as to what the original story was. But yeah, that's a little bit about Enemy Mine from 1985. Any questions, students?
I have a question. Why are you so pretty?
Because I watched this movie. And Chris, was there anything that you might know about the film that maybe I didn't touch on there? Any other knowledge bombs you want to drop on us? while I take
No,
I
like the change. I like the change in director because not many know that it started off as one and then completely scrapped not only the costume but the locations, just everything that was done.
Yeah.
Paused and waited for the new director to be free and finish his current film, which I think you can tell elements of the never-ending story as well. Just in terms of the creatures, the atmosphere, the locations is very. I'm adamant one of the locations, probably just made it up, is the same. The lake, I think, is in the never-ending story as well as Enemy Mine as well.
Ooh, I'll keep an eye out for that.
It's very apparent that those two films hold hand nicely through the director.
That is really cool. There was one shot later in the film too, which I'm sure we'll get to too, but I took a photo of it and sent it to the group chat. It's like, this is the cave that Luke hung upside down in Empire Strikes Back. Like, it just, like, down to the pillar in the middle. I was like, you've reused a set. Like, there's no one will change my mind.
just paint it a different color.
Yeah, that's it. But heading into the film, obviously, Chris, you've brought the film to us. I want to know a little bit more about kind of your connection to it and why you chose it. So we usually would break down who kind of knows the most, who knows the least. And Kay, I think I can speak for both of us when we had no concept of the film existing.
Oh, none at all.
Wicked. So you win there, Chris. You know the most about the film. So before we dive into some conversation about it, why? Why did you pick this?
It's a film. So growing up, when it came to film, we used to have a video, which we don't have them anymore, which sucks. I miss Blockbuster. I miss in the UK we had a little local one, video picker tape. And on a Saturday, I'd get in the car with my dad. He would go out in public in his slippers, and we would go down and just pick a couple of films and watch them over the weekend. And fond memories, one of them he picked up was Enemy Mine, which I'm guessing at the time, considering my age, must have only been out a few years when we first watched it.
How old were you when you watched it for the first time?
So what do we say? So it came out 85. I'm going to say I was probably my middle, 7 or 8.
Wow, okay, yeah.
First time I watched it, and I've seen it many times since.
So cool.
But I've just got many. It's mad watching it because I watch it every now and again, once every few years. And over the years, I watched it again last night because I hadn't seen it for a couple of years, and I've made up not story elements but scene changes. There's bits in the film where it almost Star Wars, you get a swipe and a pan, and the story or the scenes flow. But there's a couple of bits in this film where it jumps and it changes all of a sudden.
Like where a year in the future, what's going on here?
Yeah, what happened? There's a bit towards the end. I'm adamant he spent at least 40 minutes to an hour back on the space station with his friends and everything, explaining what had gone on, and then they went back together. It doesn't happen in the film. That's something that I've just created in my head over the years.
Headcanon. We all do it with Star Wars fans, dude. Like, you know how many plot holes that damn series has? We're here for it.
But it's it's just
the official Star Wars plot hole filler.
That's it, baby. That's it.
We need them, but it's fun memories of watching it with my dad as a child. Yeah. It's the story resonated, the characters is just, which I feel scared me as a child, which is why, because I can still picture the face of Jerry when he gets angry and his eyes and the noise that Gossett Jr makes with his throat when he's talking. Yeah. It's just things that have always stayed with me, that like the characters stayed with me forever. So it's
so cool.
Yeah, it's just a fun film. It's just a class. I just love it.
It's a great pick, dude. And one of the things I got when I put it on TikTok too is we had people replying to, and somebody being like, "Man, this is like peak cinema." I was like, "Okay, cool, I'm ready." And there's a lot of really cool stuff like that too. But have you then gone to show it to like your kids and stuff now too? Like, have they seen the film with you, or they're not quite there yet?
No, they're not quite there. I've got a 10, 7, and a 3-year-old girls, and like the 10-year, they've grown up. Obviously, they've grown up with Star Wars in the house. It's everywhere. So the 10-year-old has gone through her phase. The 7-year-old's riding the Star Wars wave currently.
Hell yeah!
But I don't feel Enemy Mine is a. That face scared me as a child, and I remember, and it still stays. That feeling stays with me now, and I don't think I can inflict that on my children.
It's funny you say that. Like Darth Vader was my night terror. So, Like first thing I watched was Empire, and him coming
mine.
down in Luke's vision on the cave on Dagobah. Still, like I think about that when I was a kid, and that haunted me for years. Nope, do not like. Yeah, but that's awesome, man. Like, yeah, it's great that you have like such a long connection to the film too. I think that's really beautiful, and it's one of the things that we love doing here too. It's like I said, the concept isn't come here and show us the Scorsese film that's the greatest film of all time objectively. It's literally just like give us something that means something to you, and you know, share that with us. So we're honored that you've chosen this film and shared that with us, man. Like we're pumped to get into the conversation.
Yeah, because Naf and I, at least, we've discussed, like, at least one of my personal theories about film is I can guarantee you every film that has ever been made in the vast history of this world has been someone's favorite movie.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's because it's like you, or just something that meant somebody to something. And but going with it, yeah, like we obviously knew nothing. But before we get into our conversation, for those of us people listening, we don't do a play-by-play. We want to give a little spoiler alert. We don't do a play-by-play. We're not going to go through beat for beat exactly what's going to happen here. But if you're a person who is spoiler averse or would prefer to just, you know, kind of not have spoilers before you go into something, just so you know, we're going to be getting into that kind of territory. So put this on pause, come back after you've watched the film, or if this is going to intrigue you and you're a person like me who really does not necessarily care about spoilers, like definitely just come on in. It's a good conversation with some fun people, and just come on in and hang out. But yeah,
that's it. Like we don't do a in-depth. Yeah, exactly. So there's your warning, and we don't do like Kay said, like an in-depth spoiler breakdown. So chances are you can still go into this film fresh. As I've actually been getting feedback from people too that they listen to the episode and then they watch the movie, and I'm like, oh, that's like backwards to what you're supposed to do. But you know what? Enjoy.
Hey, so, that's how I do it. Literally, often I will. Naf is like my screener for films. Most often, Naf will go and see something before I get a chance to, and I literally just have to ask him, like, is it worth seeing?
Yeah,
and then he'll give me like his breakdown, and then he'll say yes, and I still won't do it.
Yeah, right.
And like, so in theory, it's a system that works.
Yeah,
but let's move on to some of our topics today. So obviously, one of the main things that we kind of were just discussing is there's a lot, you know, you were talking about the performances just now, Chris, and the things there. And I gotta say, the performances here, especially obviously from the two leads, but like, this movie rides or dies on those performances. And it's like, it was one of those things where I was watching it and I was like, oh my God, Dennis Quaid believes this.
Yeah.
Like this, he's not camping it up. He's there. He's in it. He's ready to go. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. I kind of am picking up and putting down.
I thought it was really interesting too that like you go on a bit of a journey with these characters too, even like kind of how you connect with them. I'm curious, Chris, like your experience probably early on, like watching it, because I'll tell you one of the things that happened here is I texted Keegan and I was like, dude, this film's kind of amazing. And his response back in the text messages was hilarious. It was so dry. It was kind of like, what? He's like, yeah, Dennis Quaid is trying really hard. And I was like, where are you at? And he's about half an hour in. I was like, cool, I'm about half an hour ahead of you. And I was like, I felt like that too, the first little bit. Part of me was like, I don't know, Chris. I don't know if you were cooking with this one. And then it starts to move in a direction I didn't expect. And I was like, oh, I love this. I love this a lot. What was your experience like when you saw it for the first time?
Memory is from the first time. There's scenes and there's bits that stand out. Sure. Watching it in terms of a performance from Quaid, there's a big difference between the first scene on the lake. There's that when the meteorites happen, and up to that, you watching it back, you feel like he's not overacting, but definitely
feels like I'm watching
doing
Star Trek.
Something. But then it feels like that. But then from that moment when they realise that they've got to move and they've got to get somewhere, and then they start working together, it changes. It jumps up a gear, and you can start. But the Gossett Jr. and what he's wearing 100% makes that relationship more realistic because he doesn't have to pretend. It's like he's there. It's so good. It stands up and holds. You could put that in a film now, and it would still hold up now comfortably.
It was one of the things that you mentioned just before, which I didn't put in my fun facts, but like Gossett Jr., that voice. That's him, Kay. It's not like done in like entirely in ADR or anything afterwards. Like he did the voice. There's no effects. Organic. Those gurgles is an idea that he came up with, and I think I was reading that some of the language is also like it's Russian but reversed. So they've kind of like made a real language for it. I was a little confused early on because I had our main character able to understand him a little bit, but I couldn't. And I thought my subtitles were broken. I was like, why is it just saying alien language when they're talking to one another? Like, what do you mean Jerry? How did you hear Jerry from that? That's not Jerry. And so I went and I was like, all right, maybe I need a different subtitle file. And I realized, nope, I'm not supposed to understand it. This is just basically I'm an onlooker here. This guy knows, I don't know. Okay, it's fine. Let's do it.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really cool touch.
Well, I mean, you and I always talk about that. Like language being used in film is always just such an interesting thing, and it always gets dicey when you get like. At least I always feel like when we try to make English this, monolith of like the only language that like exists. But what I love about films like this, it's kind of similar to stuff like Hunt for Red October, where it's like. They use just a little device of it being like, oh, just the more they get used to talking to one another, it's going to be English for the sake of us.
Yeah.
But
it's what James Cameron tried to do with the second Avatar.
But no, he did not succeed.
It's like, oh, we're all, man, just, we'll get on a tangent. Then we'll do a 3-hour episode.
In this house, we do not stand Way of Water. Like, and so,
it's beautiful though. It's beautiful. Like,
no doubt. But besides that, to a film that's actually worth our time. Chris, I wanted to know because like one of those things that like truly there is some like heartbreaking moments. Like Dennis Quaid like really leans into like both of them do like the whole birthing scene, everything there. Like I'm like, this is some like real ass shit. Yeah. This is some real ass like emotion, like really like just getting into. I'm like, God, I'm tearing up a little here. Like I'm having a moment.
I want to know too from Chris because I know we mentioned a lot about like the performance and the prosthetics, but one of the things I was really impressed by was how Gossett is able to have his emotion come through that prosthetic. Particularly, there's those few moments where they separate for the first time and they reconnect in the birthing scene, like. Like your thoughts on those kinds of scenes. Like, tell me everything.
It's difficult, isn't it, when someone's wearing prosthetics and they say, like Jim Carrey in The Grinch, as an example, says it's difficult to relay and show emotions. He does it obviously being very animated and all over the show, but with Gossett Jr., his eyes, I know he's wearing contacts, obviously, but those moments when they leave for the first time, I feel, I'm going to call him Jerry. Jerry obviously knew, I feel, what he was going through at that time, which is why he was upset. He was being left on his own. That scene's proper emotional from Jerry's point of view. I love that bit and the music. And then we'll say the birthing scene from Quaid's point of view was just absolutely talking about the whole lead up to it as well, talking about lineage, and because there's loads of time jumps in the film, and the only way you can tell is by the level of fake beard, how fake the beard gets is there's another time jump, there's another jump. Yeah. But the bit with the lineage, learning about each other.
I thought that was beautiful.
That thing. Yeah, it was nice. And then obviously saying goodbye, not even saying goodbye, just that whole moment's horrific, and then you're gonna have to open me was just what? Yep. Yeah. What do you mean?
Well, there's two moments that you mentioned that I want to come back to as well and talk about, because the one is the first death that we experience in the film, is the second death technically is his co-pilot, and there's that little moment at the start that kind of is, it's cute, and then they're kind of the big white balloon, and then it comes down, and the way that he's just I really liked how they edited the scene of that character's passing, because he looks at him, he's like, hey, promise me, don't let the other guys call her this, she doesn't like it, just it's gonna be okay. And he's like, yep, you'll tell her yourself. Normal 80s character is dying kind of dialogue. And then the fact that he's just I'm real tired, and then the explosion draws his gaze, and then when he comes back, the guy's just gone. I was like, okay, I see what you're doing here. I thought that was really cool, especially in the early half of the film where I was a bit like, ooh, this is like real kind of campy. Like, I don't know how I feel about it, and that kind of like shock knocked me into my seat. I was like, oh, okay. And the other one sorry, go. Okay.
With some of those. Oh well, I mean, just to your point, like it's kind of one of those things where I'm wondering how much of like previous director versus like the new, because when we were talking about like the director shift, I know it's like you guys were saying like that they scrapped the whole thing and started over there. It feels like that there was like a distinct shift, and I'm like, I wonder if some of the stuff from the previous director made it in. And
you know what's funny is like
in the beginning.
I was thinking about that too, Kay, because I was like, maybe it is from that change in director, and then I found that like I think that change works for the film quite a bit too, because again, the characters come down and they're ready to go, and then it's as you were saying, Chris, that when it kind of changes and they have to work together or they're just going to die, that it starts to click and it becomes this kind of, you know, like buddy comedy almost for a little bit, which is cool.
And then it changes again. There's three distinct, if you can get through the first 15 minutes of the very campy 80s sci-fi, I will call it, with that music and the special
Star
effects.
Wars, let's go.
Discount Star Wars for 15 minutes, if that, then it jumps into a buddy film for the next however long, and then that last bit again where there's the big change in the score and the music and Zamis, and that feels like a completely different film as well. There's three, and then they complement each other. Each one builds into the next one beautifully.
It's very much a journey that you go on, and like one of the other scenes that I was thinking of was, as we were saying before, when they do separate for the first time, you're kind of unsure. Also, like Des Quaid's character is like throwing shade at Jerry a bit of like, all we do is sit around and nothing, you're still fat, you know, like, oh, you can't do anything. I wasn't giving that any thought. I actually, in the back of my mind, was like, he's like stealing extra food and like keeping it for himself. He's gonna like turn against him or something. Like that was, I was like, maybe that's where it's going. And it's that moment where he kind of turns and spikes the lens, looks right down the camera and just cries in my face for like a solid few seconds that I was like, I'm a horrible person. Probably racist. I don't. Wild.
Space racist. Yeah.
Space racism. It's a thing.
Listen, you didn't see the Jerry twist at all until he came back.
Nah, not at all.
How did you feel when he came back and that happened?
When he comes back and the first reaction is him just being like, "Hey, how long do you think it's going to be cold for?" I was like, I think. When he stayed, my thought was that he knows he's going to die if he doesn't. And so when it came back, I was either expecting him to be dead or to come back and be like, I'm terminal, essentially. I don't have long. And then when he started explaining that, I was like, oh, damn. And I think that the story and the world building there is really beautiful too, and how they unravel that. How they talk about you on Earth, birthing is a choice. For us, it just is. It just happens.
Because straight away, I was just like, I remember going, Jerry's a female, and then when it explains it, it's just like, well, Jerry's an alien, so we don't have a male female with.
Yeah.
It just is.
It was just hadn't experienced that before on film. Is just was mad as well. Dracs don't have that.
Kay, I'm curious to your reaction to. Okay, I believe that we should be back live on TikTok. Just 2 seconds there. Sorry. So TikTok is up and running again. Awesome. And then YouTube should be up and running again too. That we should be back. Okay, cool. Awesome. So I was asking you, Kay, just time code that for me too.
What about my reaction?
Your reaction to Dennis Quaid's reaction to that revelation.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, listen. Like in that moment, because I was having a similar feeling where I was like, okay, what is going on here? Like, what is this sort of feeling there? And, and it's been a long day for me. So I was like, I don't know if I'm just not picking up what people are putting down here or what things are happening there. But then I'm watching this and then they go into the whole, like, I'm pregnant. And it's like, it's this moment of like, oh, this is it. this is in his, like, Dennis Quaid, like, again, what I really love about his performance here, and I really think it is admirable, is it's like he just goes balls to the wall with it, but not in a way where it's like at times in the beginning you could argue it's borderline too much, but the further on in the film it gets, it's just like it's dialed in. And this was one of those where it's like he just has this insane range of emotions, because he goes being like, of course, like he kind of goes with this like, of course this is the situation we would find ourselves in, of course this is like he kind of has this like cosmic irony, cosmic like humor and joy about it for a second, but then the gravity of it sinks in. And it's like he just, because that's the one thing that this film does, even with its concept, if you don't mind me dipping into the plot a little bit.
Yeah, go for it.
The thing that with the concept is, it's kind of like, you know, when we reviewed Groundhog Day, and you and I talked about a similar thing where it was like, you know, when you hear the story of this, and I'm like, oh, I've seen stuff like this before, like the kind of enemies to friends kind of plot line. I've seen several Star Trek episodes of that. I've seen this, of that. Like I've seen, it's like, you know, it's a well-trodden trope, but then this film actually makes you sit with it. And like actually is like, no, these people are going to have to do life for presumably like several months, possibly even a couple of years. Like, it's like, this feels very like this was a significant amount of time. And it kind of makes you go, it just for me, I was like, that was one of the most interesting things about it, that it was like, these people really got a chance to know each other to the point where he understands, you know, the language now, like fully. He understands how to read it, how to interpret it, how to understand it. It's like these people had the time to understand each other. I'm like, that is just really unique in this sci-fi space, that they took a concept that is trodden, but added something to it.
Yeah.
It's like even now, 40 something years later, that I'm watching that film and going, this feels fresh to me in some aspects. Yeah. And it's not just of its time, you know, like it's fresh now, which I think is really cool. Yeah, like in that sense, it kind of like stands out a bit. And when I was doing some search for it afterwards, there were some articles that were popping up now from the last few years that were like, guys, we need to go back and look at this film again. Like, we're not talking about it anymore, but like, you should.
We should. I
thought that was wild. And I would love to know as well, like, Chris, from your perspective, when, what was it that I was thinking? Like, obviously, you've got different stages to the film. And as you move from 1 to 2 to 3, like, they are, as we said, wildly different. I'd probably even say like 4 sections to it, because you have where the kid shows up and then you have the separation afterwards. Like, walk me through some of your experience on that journey.
It's just going back to what you're saying there about previously about how that's the story, and I've seen this before, and you watch the odd episode of Star Trek or just a random sci-fi series. I'm obviously a massive Star Wars fan. There was an episode of Star Wars Rebels with Agent Callus and Zeb.
I was thinking about that.
Exactly, yes! exact same thing happened. And when I was sitting there watching that episode, I was like, I've seen this before. This is Enemy Mine, but in animation.
Holy
and
shit.
They go through the same story, the same journey, and we know what happens with Callus and Zeb and what goes on there, and the
they fall in
lineage
love
and
and
just
live together
everything.
happily ever after.
Exactly, that's exactly what happens. So it's nice to see that still, the Enemy Mine story still bouncing through into current things that I still watch now, which was class.
Yeah,
but
adding something to those stories.
Mad.
Yeah, it is. It's entirely mad. I'm actually mind blown that didn't come up for me thinking about it. So like you saying it now, I was like, oh shit, that's exactly what that is, and. But that didn't click for me, and I could absolutely understand them taking inspiration from that too, because that's a very Star Wars thing too. Like, hey, get the story, but make it Star Wars. Yeah, now it's better. It's so cool. That's so cool. Such a great connection.
That's still, and that was the episode, because before I ever saw Enemy of Mine, that was the episode of Rebels that made me realize how much I love the show. Was that episode, because that was this moment of like, that was when I realized how much I cared about those characters, and I was like, God damn it, I'm hooked.
Yeah,
like before then I was like, oh, this is fun, but that episode was just like,
Yeah, and I think that now it's something that is showing up a lot more too, because it's not exactly the same. Like the Outpost episode in Breaking Bad, I think is very much like
you mean
not Breaking Bad. Sorry,
Bad Batch?
wow, Bad Batch.
You are combining two incredible shows.
That's
but
true.
Like,
I mean, Bad Batch is better objectively, but you know,
than anything.
Yeah,
like
I don't remember the clones taking meth. Like we've definitely mixed those shows up there.
I mean, did you watch the Brain Invaders episode in Clone Wars?
Like, you're missing I don't know if you saw episode 17, but I mean, like,
yeah. But yeah, I love that concept of people being like stranded.
Wild.
I love the concept of people being
a junkie now.
Sorry, what were we saying?
Don't worry.
Okay, fine. I'll listen back to it later. But to my point, which is much more important anyway, like I love that concept of two people being stranded in like a place, and they don't really have like an out, and they've kind of got opposing like goals for one another too. Like one other film that I really like that does that quite well is The Last Jedi with Rey and Luke when they're stranded in the same place with opposing goals. Hey Keegan.
I was already going to try to bring West Side Story up with the fucking languages. Damn it. I should have taken the opportunity while I had it.
I beat you. That is what episode are we on? 43. That's like 42 points to NAF and 3 points to K.
I'll take mine.
This is my thing, Chris. I find a way to tie everything into Last Jedi. Always.
Yeah, Neff tries to always find some way to tie every single film to have like a reference to Last Jedi.
Sorry, I gave him an in with Star Wars Rebels. You should have given me a heads up.
Listen, there were a couple of these where he forgot to mention Last Jedi, and I really had a field day with that.
Yeah, it was actually painful for me emotionally, but that's okay.
That's made it better. But so going with that, kind of talking about Naf, one of those things with this that I kind of want to talk about, and this kind of goes to the craft of it all. We were talking about the prosthetics earlier and the things there, and I really want to go into kind of the production of this, because as we were talking about Neverending Story and these things there, this film, whether it's use of like its use of practical effects, its use of puppets, its use of kind of this very Stan Winston, very much this style of creature, and things that I just want to know. Like obviously,
I got thoughts for days, baby. Earlier. I got thoughts for days.
I mean, start pouring them out.
One, we were talking about the concept of like discount Star Wars a little bit, which I think is a bit mean, but it's funny. But with that in mind, it feels that way because so much of what they're doing here is familiar. Like it's been in Star Wars. How they do the space battles are miniatures on a blue screen. We've got the use of matte paintings, which Star Wars was huge at pioneering a lot of that stuff. Question for you guys: do you know which visual effects company worked on Enemy Mine?
Oh, I actually don't. It wasn't. It couldn't have been ILM.
It's ILM.
Was it really?
Yep. Enemy Mine,
That's
1995, special effects, industrial light and magic. It's just, okay, it makes sense why. And obviously with significantly less budget than probably Star Wars was getting at the time, it makes sense that some of it isn't as clean as what Star Wars was doing, but those matte paintings are beautiful in the backdrops. And
there was one shot of the moons, like it was one of the last shots of the film.
It's giving very what's that film?
It honestly reminded me of Avatar a little bit there, like of the Pandora in the distance. Like it was like gorgeous.
Yeah, dude. Like it's mental. And they also got special effects from a local company called what was it? Sorry, let me go back here. United Effects in Munich, which looks like they also worked on Neverending Story as well. So that's kind of cool. Yeah.
It feels very atmospheric, like Neverending Story. The bit where Jerry's singing, where they're learning about the language with the sunset before the meteorites come down, that's a beautiful matte painting. That's a nice scene as well.
Yeah, it's
You're
beautiful.
Absolutely right.
Like, and the world building there too, obviously, is insane. And I'm like, I expected to see so much more of them. I think that when the film started, I thought they're probably going to get picked up and taken to either one of the planets, and then they're going to have to he's going to have to protect him or vice versa, because they'll be like, no, we're friends now. Don't kill my friend. But no, no, they stick to their guns, and I think that's beautiful. But like on the craft side of things, we talked kind of at length about the prosthetic too, but if you haven't seen the film, our conversation is not going to do it justice. Like, you have to see this thing. Like, it is, he calls him like, toad face or something like that, and he actually has these like bits on his throat and his ears that like I was going to say throb, but that doesn't feel like the right word. They pulse. And the way that the eyes move and the contact's there, and even when you get to like that birthing scene, you got to pull this whole thing up. It's insane. And then you get to the prosthetic of the baby and how it develops. I was like, what the hell? This is a puppet that someone's controlling covered in goop. It's so impressive.
I will say there's a bit that's not so impressive, which still makes me laugh now, which always stands out. It's the montage scene. So we have a couple of time jumps with Zamis going from this sort of size to, there's a bit where Zamis is obviously looking out of the cave. We've got some upbeat music and Dennis Quaid's running and picks up Zamis to pretend that he's flying him around like a small child.
Yeah,
that scene still tickles me now because it's clearly not a child and it's just a doll, and it's the way the way that moves still makes me laugh. But it's I like that entire montage scene.
And again, so different to like
version of that.
Go.
So sorry, just a quick add-on. My favorite example of that was seeing when like what some of the scavengers are holding him hostage. And it's like they're like holding him over, like I'll drop him, I'll do this thing there, and it's clearly the same puppet that they used.
There's no weight to him.
Yeah, it's like they've left the suit on the mannequin, and they've been like, should we just grab that and put that in the scene? Yeah, let's do that. It's beautiful.
It's like the kids in the loo. We need to just kind of like get it going out here.
It's been ages. What's he doing? Like, just grab the doll.
Just grab the doll. No one will notice.
One of the things that really stuck out to me too was like the use of like narration as a storytelling tool, because it almost feels like that you're kind of wondering, who are you telling the story to? And then it hits a point where you realize he's telling the kid the story about him and his dad, and then it kind of disappears. The narration is like not really there anymore until kind of the end, where it's just like, oh, this is what happened, and that's a beautiful ending too. But yeah, the prosthetics on that suit, just the audio is not going to do justice. If you haven't seen the film, go and check it out just for that alone.
You need to see this. Just look up some clips to see how good
his narration, I always thought, and I still feel, even watching it now, being older, is potentially him later on back on the space station telling his superiors, it felt like, where have you been for 3 years? And the narration is him telling his superiors, this is what's gone on and this is what happened, because it goes so quick, like, and it feels like, when you think about the film being younger, that was age that picked up on his medical bay, almost like Finn in a certain film, being rushed through, and then there would have been moments where they're going, where have you been? What have you been up to? And talking to his friends, like those moments would have happened. Obviously not filmed, but it feels like the narration was almost. I expected it to cut to a meeting room in front of superiors saying like, "This is what's happened. This is where it's been." And I don't care what you say. I'm going back.
Yeah.
Well, and if I may jump into that, like kind of with the plot aspects there, and now if I want to make sure we get to your points as well. But do you mind if I hop into like a plot thing with this? With this would be like one of my favorite things was. This film became so unpredictable to me that there was a moment that I legit thought, are they just going to kill Dennis Quaid right here?
Mm-hmm.
Like when they shoot him, I was like, you know what?
Oh, yeah.
This film might have the balls to just do it.
Yeah.
Like to just, and I was like, be like a really fucking downer of an ending.
Mm-hmm.
Be like the kid is just abducted by these scavengers.
And then it finishes.
Dennis Quaid is just killed, and I was like, because then they even set you up a little bit for that of like the guys with the wreaths and the things there, and it's like, oh, this one doesn't have a tag, this doesn't have a thing there. And at first I thought, oh my god, this is a bleak fucking ending. It's just being like, just call him a Protestant. and just being this thing there of like.
I thought that
like,
was insane.
damn.
I did not anticipate the film taking off again after that. I think I thought the same as you. Like, is it just going to end here? You know, this is just going to be it. And it takes off again, which is like, yeah, wild. And I love, as you said, Chris, like that part is, I think probably where the film could have benefited from another like 10, 15 minutes, you know, like to just expand that out a little bit because it kind of happens real quick. But then we get back and it's like when you see his friends or the other like people from like the space station come down and, you know, be crying and upset when they think this kid is dead, that I kind of was like, hold on. When did you guys get here? Why are you guys here? You didn't want him to leave. He blew up the space station to get out. Like, why are you here? And so I think that it probably could have benefited from a bit more like there. But all in all, it's still beautiful to see them sort of come through there. And it's funny that the voiceover also gives me a bit of like, it feels a bit like that first theatrical cut of Blade Runner, where they've just got like Harrison Ford doing the voiceover. He's kind of like disinterested. And I was like, what's going on here? It feels like out of place sometimes, but in the you know, connection of the whole story is kind of nice. And I think that it's even one of those films that, based on what they showed us visually, could have worked without the voiceover too. Like just one that, from what they were showing us, I think that could have been an interesting like experience as well.
There's definitely time, because when Quaid's back and I love the scene as well. One towards the end, the Dracs rising, I will call it, when they all realise what's going on and they all start appearing is amazing. But the bit when he goes straight into the space station and starts speaking Drac and the Dracs are looking at him, I love the bit when they go, like, of course we know who you are, your uncle. There must have been a significant amount of time for Zamis to talk to the other Dracs and tell the Dracs that story, going, almost giving them hope, saying, no, there's like, not all humans are dirty. There's this one called Uncle, and this is the story. And the fact that they all knew that story and took that on board as well.
Beautiful.
I love the detail. I love the detail also of that being Uncle. Like, you know, you could imagine like in certain films, and no shade on it, where people be like, oh, that like you're a surrogate father, so you like that person takes on that mantle. I love the fact that he always went by Uncle as a term of respect to the person who he like to you know, to Jerry, and to have that thing there.
And to be able to put a costume like that together that still works on a kid, as we talk about like the craft there too, right? Like it still works on the kid.
It's still expressive.
Yeah. And I love also, there's a little moment there where he goes, like fingers, different. And he's like, well, yeah, of course they're different. We're different. Yeah. Like you're a Drac. I'm a human. And he's like, I'm going to get 4 and 5 fingers. I'm just going to grow them.
I was like, get 4 or 5. Whoa.
So beautiful. But Chris, one of the other things that you mentioned about, the kind of craft of the film was the music and how that changes as the film does. I'd love to get some more thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's like when I was going to ask you how you felt, because when you go back and watch an 80s film and you get the cheese, it's not even cheesy, it's just 80s synthesizer straight in. It's a bloke on a keyboard, it feels like, almost just playing noises. And there's certain scene changes where they go, shall we play something like to blend the scenes together? No, let's just put an aggressive noise in as we cut the scene. happens so many times. But yeah, the first half of the film with the music until Zamis is there, the music, I mean, they released it on vinyl and CD, which is crazy, because the first half of that must just sound awful. But then the second half is beautiful. It's Star Wars. It's beautiful. It's orchestral. It's really, really nice and plays the scenes and fits beautifully.
Well, for a bit of reference, for anyone listening and for you guys as well, the composer was Maurice Jarre, who passed away in 2009, and Maurice is known for having won 3 Oscars for his scores, which I'll let you know which films those were. He was nominated 5 times and won 3. He was nominated for Ghost, Gorillas in the Mist, Witness, A Passage to India, and The Message. Oh no, he was nominated 4 more times as well. Also for The Life and Times of Judge Roy Bean, Dr. Zhivago, Sundays, and Cybele, and Lawrence of Arabia. And he won for Lawrence of Arabia, Dr. Zhivago, and A Passage to India. This is a big name guy.
You can feel that epic scale on some of those scenes, definitely, in that film.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. which makes me think that the beginning kind of 80s cheesiness was a little bit, and again, cheesy by our standards, right? But I feel like it might have been intentional, because I'm like, you take a craftsman like that, and it's like, I find it hard to believe that would just be a thing, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I think that there feels like a deceptive part to this film of being like, oh, kind of fool you with my left hand so you don't see the sucker punch coming with my right. Like, that, like, it kind of feels that way with the tone, because it's even the kind of stuff, like, you look at like the starfighters, right? Like in the beginning, and I'm like, okay, these are a little cheesy, like a little bit of things there. Like, this feels like somebody just kind of put up a bunch of, like, you know, blocks and things there just to kind of make it look like busy back there. But it feels like kind of your backyard version of, you know, of Star Wars. But then you get to that point where they go back into the space station and everything looks so good.
It's 2001.
Like, it all looks like it's really interesting, because like they have that track of pushing him along. Like they have the whole thing of like, oh, it's not people on you know, a gurney. It's just the gurney can move itself, because why wouldn't it be able to? And then you have people on that kind of like elevator track kind of thing there. I'm like, you know, like that style is so in depth that I'm like, well, then why is the starfighter like that? It's like, it makes me think that there was like something happened. And it's like, it makes me believe that there had to have been some sort of decision made that is the trajectory of how this film is going to be.
Like let's start. It almost feels a bit like, remember when Vince Gilligan's like, I want to take like Mr. Chips and turn him into Starface. It's like, let's take like Flash Gordon and turn it into a rival by the end, you know, like it's
exactly
not necessarily to that kind of, you know, extent, but like it is a bit of, it starts and you're like, okay, cool, yeah, let's do it, let's go, like it's 80s action, and then it does kind of what's the word, like unravel like you a little bit, and by the end where you're getting that narration of what happens and the beautiful music and the gorgeous painting, and it's just static on, hey, he did take him home and he presented himself, and then his name was added to the lineage. I think it also comes back to that scene just before he passes away where you were talking about it earlier, Chris, this where they talk about the lineage of one another, and it's what Gossett does with the dialogue there that I thought was so beautiful, where he looks at him and he's very emotional, and he says like, this can be like our gift to one another, like do me the honor of telling me. And the way that he reads back, the way that Jack Quaid is literally just like, yeah, my mum was a waitress and my dad did this, and the way that he just takes it in so intensely, and he's like, whose mother was a waitress and whose father was, and I was like, oh man. It's like that feeling you get when you fall in love with someone for the first time and it kind of clicks because they tell you something really boring about their life and you just go, yeah, that's so beautiful. And you're like, ah, damn it, I'm in love. I've been playing.
Like, I never would think that. I would never think this is beautiful. What the fuck is happening to me? And no. And
that's the moment I knew I was in love with the characters. Like, I put on my notes here, I wanted to talk about how he went from like cringe to love. I was like, I can't even tell you there, but like it happened as their relationship like flourished that I fell in love with them. And that's why I called the episode Now Kiss, because I was like, you know what? They're in love.
Go for it.
Like, Uncle, Dad number 2, whatever you want to call him, I'm here for it.
I'm fine with this.
Yeah.
I endorse. I second the motion. I'm here for it.
I was going to say too, you were talking about the kind of design of some of the spaceships early on, Kay, and how they were a little like cheesy, the designs themselves. One of the things that early on kind of struck me too, just before that death scene that we were talking about earlier, is when the miniature explodes, it's how it launches them forward. You don't get that a lot in films these days. Because it's something like the MCU where it'll be like an explosion and they just kind of sit there and like, oh, okay, we're good. It's like, no, it's like the sheer velocity and the shockwave of that will launch you, and it throws him like crazy. And I thought that was really cool and a really nice touch. I love a bit of wire work like that. I imagine like a bunch of people just on the side being like, all right, ready? 3, 2, and pull. And then he's like, oh, shit. Oh, that would have been really cool. And Yeah, and I'm conscious also of making sure you get some sleep tonight too, Kay, and that Chris, you get to go about your day as well, because you're just sort of starting there as well. So we'll touch on a couple more things before we look to kind of finish up here as well. But the story and the journey here is incredible, and we talked a lot about like the craft too. Like I said, I really like the use of miniatures and how they kind of blend those scenes with what's in the foreground too, because you can tell that they're on a set, but particularly the prosthetic of the Sarlacc type animal.
Oh yeah,
I could not.
That's exactly what it felt like, a Sarlacc.
Yeah, it very much felt like that. And
scariest thing of like that thing coming out of there, I was like, that is terrifying.
Down to the wrap around the leg and the shot at the thing. I was like, excuse me. And I think this is pre-Return of the Jedi too. Return of the Jedi is 89, I believe. Yeah, like, or 87.
I think you're right.
Yeah, so this is like pre-Return of the Jedi. So I could imagine one of the guys being like, hey, so I worked on this movie that made no money and nobody's going to know if you steal this idea. Here you go, George. And George was like, okay, yeah, I like that idea. And then he moved on. I definitely didn't go too far in some places. You know, like it just... It's wicked.
Yeah.
But it's crazy that
when it comes through, because you know what it is, and I can't remember what it's called. It's like the bit in Shaun of the Dead when you see the shotgun at the top.
Chekhov's gun.
I can't remember what it's. Yes, there we go. And obviously at the beginning of the film, when you land on the planet, you see certain creatures and things happening, and you're like, okay, and then it comes back to it later with the characters that you now love. And then when it comes back again in the house, and you're like, oh, hang on a minute, like, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing this to me?
Yeah.
And then
that was not what I was expecting.
I thought he was done.
I thought we had the plan to pay off, like sort of thing already.
Yeah.
So I wasn't expecting it to come around for a third time.
Yeah, it's mental. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, it was brilliant. But I guess we kind of want to just like give final sort of thoughts with this, like sort of things there, kind of go.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I would love to kick us off. Like, I think that, like it's one of those things that, as I said, like you weren't part of the conversation, Chris, but like literally as we were like setting up beforehand, I literally was just telling Kay, I was like, man, like, this is like why we do it. It's like literally when I go back and I look at the things that are on my watch list that weren't before, this is one of my like favorite surprises that I got. So like I love the choice, and it's something that I want to kind of like show other people too. On my Letterboxd review, I wrote like there's a lot of good stuff in here, but I would understand if you turned it off in the first 30 minutes. So like you just gotta. I had to do it for work, so just like stick through it. Yeah, like it's worth it. It's just, it's something else. And I think it is a little bit like that feeling that probably people got when Star Trek was coming out originally, where they probably anticipated this, big bang boom sci-fi thing, and they got this contemplative, like, oh, the universe is essentially in balance, so all we're doing is exploring and going and talking with other people. We're not doing so much war, we're just like chatting. And it's funny that it kind of fits that NAFCOR aesthetic, Kay, like they are the feeling of like,
it does.
One of the things that I'm always drawn to, Chris, is films that are like literally two characters in a room talking, just stuck. Like, yeah, let's go. Like, oh, you're stuck in an elevator for 2 hours? I'm there, baby. I'm there. My favorite film of 2023 was Sanctuary, and it's literally two characters in a hotel room doing hotel room things.
Well,
but
right, okay.
Yeah. But I love that kind of stuff. I love things that are character driven, that like, and the film asks a lot of questions too, because there's also a funny little sort of through line there that we didn't talk about, which is the Mickey Mouse is his, what's his name, like Shabbat or something like that. And there's one little scene where he's like, your Mickey Mouse is an idiot, and he just can't. He's like, okay. And the way he comes back and he goes, I didn't mean what I said. And then he goes, I didn't mean what I said about Mickey Mouse. That I was like, the earnestness in that delivery, I wanted to cry. I was like, oh, Papa, it's okay. Mickey Mouse is going to be fine.
That was one of those scenes it was Quaid's genuine reaction when they're proper at each other, aggressive, and he slags off Mickey Mouse and Quaid walks off camera laughing. Was a blooper, was an outtake of him actually laughing.
I would see
but
that.
It fits so well, they had to leave it in.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny, like the other scenes that stand out to me are after he learns how to read it, and he goes, read it, translate it, and then when Jerry says to him, you've read it, but you've not heard it how it's supposed to be heard. These words are sung, and he just sits there and sings, and we're watching like the sunset in the background. I was like, damn, dude. Damn.
Yeah.
They knew what was up with this. So
There's a few scenes that stay and picture the one bit that I've just remembered, which stayed with me as a child: the carcasses of the children.
Yeah.
When he goes to find, he goes in that room and there's just a floor, and he looks down on the floor and he's like, well, that's where all the kids are. That's interesting. That's just like, that's graphic as well. Yeah, nice.
I think another one that sticks out is also when he's off traveling on his own and he sees the Pepsi can, and you're like, oh, people have settled here. And then he realizes what it is. And I think that kind of gives him a little bit of more respect for him. He's going, no, we are a parasite. Like, this is what we do. This is what we leave behind. And I always love aspects of science fiction in particular that call into question like the nature of like us, you know, like are we actually like good at our core, or do we just consume until we can't consume anymore? Like, oh man, delicious.
So the film's deep, isn't it? There's so many layers.
And it's funny that like as we're saying it now, and I'm like, I want to wrap up. I'm ready for a nap too. That I'm also like, we talk about it and more things come up, and I think that's the mark of a special film. And so I'm sure more things will come up too as you guys kind of wrap up. But my final thoughts are I really liked it. I gave it a 4 out of 5 on Letterboxd. I think that it does a lot of things really well. I love it had ILM in it. I love the score. I love the performances, and I love how it evolves itself. I think it's dope. What about you, Kay?
Absolutely. Well, you know, my feeling on the matter was a lot similar to you. Like, I walked into this not knowing what to expect. The first 15 minutes, I was like, oh, this is going to be fun. I love camp. I love a good thing there. I was like, I'm going to enjoy this. This seems like right up my alley. But then what I didn't expect was to be moved. And that's the thing that this film does so effortlessly and so uniquely is you find yourself progressively moved in ways that like you didn't think that was this movie's job to do.
Yeah.
And like it gets deeper and deeper and more interesting. And as you said, Neff, it's like it has the hallmarks of every great science fiction thing, which is it should make us think about ourselves, and it should make us think about our connection in all of this. And you know, I love the performances. I love that it was taken seriously within its own way of doing things. And I walk away from this film, and I think this is one of those films that like will continue to grow on me throughout the years of like, just because even just in talking about it, I'm like, I'm loving it more and more.
Yeah.
As we're talking about it. And
are there any like specific moments to you that you feel like, oh, that was the one, that's where it got me?
Oh, I mean, it definitely, again, as I said, when Dennis Quaid got shot, like the whole thing there with I loved, you know, him raising the kid. I love the oh, your uncle.
Yeah, that's true. Like, yeah, the football scene was great.
He's like, I had to get him up on his education.
I
the American education system.
Exactly, like trademark. But I really loved the heart of the dad's speech, like the thing of telling him about his father and telling about things there. And it's like again, the whole I'm different, you're different, but it was such a beautiful way of putting it, where it's like, oh yeah, I'm not like that, but that's not like you're not wrong for that. We're just different. Yeah. And it's like it's acknowledging different in a beautiful way, where it's like it's validating your question, because you're right, you have observed something correct, but you're not wrong for being different. Like
it feels a bit like the conversation that Timothée Chalamet's character has with his dad in like Call Me by Your Name, where it's like a little bit of like, we both know what's going on here, and the way that his dad is just kind of like, here's what it is, man. You experience something I'll never experience. You're you. I love you. And it's like, oh. Yes,
that's the right way to have that conversation.
I feel it's very much like you two. The story is the journey that you two go on. Is you've got two groups of people, one that love to talk about The Last Jedi, and ones that not necessarily like to talk about The Last Jedi. And through discussion, and you both go on a journey, and at the end you find mutual ground. Yeah. You can both you realize that you can get along no matter what.
Yeah,
and it's beautiful. The Last Jedi is the best Star Wars movie, and I love it, but beside myself.
Through The Last Jedi, all things can be achieved. So put that in your notebook. Yeah.
You're gonna cut it. You're gonna put this as like the beginning. And like,
delicious. That's it. No, but see, here's the thing: people have to like hunt for it, you know. But Chris, like, man,
that's true.
A wicked, mad recommendation. Like, so
Good,
happy.
I'm glad you both enjoyed it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and yeah, would love to get from yourself maybe some final thoughts before we look to just do our last sort of like wrap ups.
It's just a beautiful. Just get through the first 15 minutes. Please just give it a go. Get through the first 15 minutes. If you're not into camp sci-fi and you enjoy being moved, give it a watch.
Yeah, it's like when you're trying to recommend anime to your friend and you're like, just get through the first 17 seasons. It pops off in season 18, bro. I swear to God.
It's difficult. I was genuinely worried what you would both think of it. And it was correct. You both sat there for the first couple of bits and go, what's he done? What are we going to do with this episode?
Yeah.
What, like, awful. What have we even asked him? And I'm glad you've taken it on and enjoyed it just to experience its class. So, I love it. I still love it now.
Yeah, awesome. And we'd obviously love to have you back too. We're just currently putting together things for our like third season 2, which will start sort of in the latter half of the year. So like again, if you love it, like we'd love to have you back again too, man. Like
absolutely.
You sent me a list of things I have to.
Love to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday, and Kay wants to stay up at like midnight and just carry on talking.
We'll find a way. It'll be like the next one. I'll get up at 7 o'clock in the morning. You guys can be in the afternoon. Okay, like it's fine. It's fine.
Exactly. I'm sure that's how time works.
That's what we do here. You know, it's like Star Wars when they give us good stories like The Last Jedi, and then they don't, like The Rise of Skywalker. So anyway, yeah, so moving on, we'll go over a little bit of cinema a la carte. If you guys have listened before, you know a little bit of what we do here, and essentially the idea here is that our film is our meat, it's our steak, and we want to find some pairings for it. Is it cheese? Is it wine? Is it another steak? Who knows? But we're going to figure it out. So each of us have come together with a couple of recommendations for you guys. If you liked this film, you can check out these ones, or if you're not sure if you liked these films, these other ones might kind of be your... what connects you to it. So Kay, why don't you kick us off, mate?
Well, as your cinematic sommelier, let me hit you off with a couple of little things here. I want to start us off with a TV show recommendation. Now, this is one that might obviously be a little bit of heresy coming from a Star Wars fan. However, I do think it's apropos to this is I want to recommend Star Trek: The Next Generation. I feel that this has a very similar tone. They both have a very similar vibe where if you really enjoy the slight camp to the style, while really deep and impactful, meaningful stories that are in many ways ahead of their time. I Star Trek: The Next Generation, I got into it in 2021 because Allie got me into it, and it was one of those things where it was like I've been insanely impressed by the stories that Star Trek tells, and I think that this is very similar to that. Another one that I want to recommend, and this is more in the fantasy line of things, but I want to recommend Steven Spielberg's Hook, because I feel that this has a very similar vibe to Hook there, like where you have a very deep story that is being told with a lot of this fluff and accoutrements that are very fun, very cool, very entertaining. But ultimately, this is about a man getting in touch with his inner child, and that has been lost.
Beautiful.
And then the final recommendation, which is if you just want another one of our surprise entries for our second season of One with the Films, this is harkening back to something that was brought to us by our dear friend David. And he picked Reign of Fire with Matthew McConaughey, Christian Bale.
Oh, Christian Bale, wow.
Have you seen that one, Chris?
Butler.
Yes, yeah, a long time ago. I remember that. Yeah, the Dragons in London.
Yeah, dude.
It's incredible.
In the modern era.
I have never had... I had so much fun with that movie that I have continuously thanked David for introducing me to Matthew McConaughey's my favorite character he's ever played, Denton Van Zam.
Brilliant.
And that man is on my heart every day of the week. So those
Amazing.
are your cinematic pairings. Those are were cinema a la carte for me.
Yeah.
Nath, how about you, my friend?
Well, yeah, I have a few choices as well because it's kind of like depending on where you want to jump off from here. Like I think if you want something that feels like warm to the heart in the same way that this does and has a bit of a sci-fi feel to it, I'm recommending Steven Spielberg's E.T. I think that is a really nice pairing here. You've got almost like a more kind of like refined, almost again more obviously kid-centric version of the story that you can kind of appreciate there. And that relationship between the two of those characters and that connection I think is very similar to what you feel here. One of the others I thought, if you wanted to kind of dial into some of the aspects that this film touches on but move it in a bit of a different direction, Ridley Scott's Alien, the first one, I think is a really cool, like very separate point to jump off. You've got similar kind of space station-y type things, and then obviously it's not so much the wholesome connection between two things, but it just is like really good space stuff. I think that it's a nice thing to sort of jump in. And then we talked about it a little bit before, but I think the Return of the Jedi is a really great thing to look at after this. You've got the same production company or visual effects company. You've got a lot of sort of beats within one that exist within the other. Again, a little bit of like, for me as well with Return of the Jedi, my connection to that film is like I don't love a lot of aspects of it, but I kind of love it as a whole, you know? And for me, it's like, I like the start. I think it's cool. I think the middle section is a bit more of like that sort of cringy, campy, like a bit like, let's get where you're going. And by the end, it's a really solid final act. And I go, yep, that's cool. But another one I just thought of while you were talking actually is one that is more into like the NAF core element of it. It's two people talking. You guys may have seen it before. It's based on a book. It's based on a book by Gene Brewer. It's called K-Pax. This was adapted into a film. This is the book in its trilogy. But this was adapted into a film with Richard Gere and Kevin Spacey. So that's the only kind of thing that you would need to contend with if you wanted to watch it. But it's one of my favorite films that he's in. And essentially it's a guy who is on Earth and like he is from another planet. And he's trying to convince the psychologist that he's within a human body. Yeah, so he's trying to convince a psychologist that he's an alien, and psychologist is trying to convince him that he has like PTSD or trauma or something, and he's putting it on. And the whole film is just their conversations back and forth, and them going beautiful. Wait, are you? Or am I? What? And so I think that's a really cool one that's kind of similar too. But it's set on Earth, and there's no kind of science fiction-y aspect to it. It very much is grounded. So that's cool. I love that movie. But not Kevin Spacey. So those are mine. And Chris, what are your pairings for this film?
Probably three very different films. If you enjoy staying with a character and following his journey, and a film taking a few twists and turns, I'm going for probably one of the best zombie films ever made, 28 Days Later.
Cool.
Ooh. Incredible.
I haven't seen that.
Love that.
Have you seen it?
No, what? No.
Okay, have you seen it?
No.
You haven't seen 28 Days Later?
Like I know its reputation, but
Chris,
I have not seen it.
Season 3 episode?
Right, so there's season 3, so 28 Days Later.
Done.
For sure.
Hell yeah.
Fantasy and a beautiful film is probably Wolfgang's film prior to Enemy Mine. I'm going Never Ending Story because it's just a beautiful orchestral atmospheric movie. Oh my God. So we're doing 2 episodes on season 3.
Baby, back to back.
And then campy 80s sci-fi with amazing prosthetics on characters, probably The Last Starfighter.
0 for 3, baby.
A film where there's I feel it's at a garage, like a Khmara or a Circle K, where there's an arcade machine a lad plays and he's really good at it, beats the game, and then a spaceship appears and says, we put that there because we're looking for the best pilots in the galaxy to come and help us.
No shit.
To help us come and take on the baddies. So, and then
it sounds like the kind of movie that would be made in the early 2020s and be like a soulless cash grab. Like, what was it called? Pixels, the Adam Sandler film.
Pixie, yes.
See, it's either that sounds like that, or the films I thought of when I was in 8th grade. where I was like, this would be dope, and it would make all the money. And
it's very like it's almost the same film as Enemy Mine. Thinking about it, it's a couple of twists and turns, amazing makeup and prosthetics on characters. But yeah, beautiful. 28 Days Later, Last Starfighter, never-ending story all the way. 3
really great choices, which you guys should definitely chuck on your list, and I'll be chucking them on mine, and we probably will have some of them for a future episode too, hopefully. But yeah, that's our episode, guys. Just wrapping up, you can find One with the Films again anywhere you find your podcasts, and you can find us across all your major socials as well at One with the Films on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. You can email us onewiththefilms@gmail.com. That's exciting. If you have any requests,
absolutely.
In the descriptions on here and on Spotify as well, you can find links to all of our profiles individually, so you can kind of hunt wherever you like. You can find me at On Second Thought. Best way is to my Instagram page and the link tree there, which will guide you anywhere you need to go. And yeah, as I said, for One with the Films on our Instagram and TikTok pages, we'll announce films a little bit in advance so you guys know what you're getting into and all that kind of stuff. And we'll do some cute little skits and stuff as time starts to permit and life gets a little bit less crazy. Yeah, but what about you, Kay? Where can I find you?
Well, you can always find me at Movie Man Opinions on any social media platform that you find, except on X, where you can find. Formerly Twitter. You can find me just at Movie Man Opinion, which is that I only have one opinion there, and that's the Bad Batch is awesome. And
baby.
So but Chris, where can everybody find you? I know that they probably already, but for those who don't live under a rock,
and also what can they expect to find when they find you, Chris?
You will find nothing other than Star Wars content on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Star Wars and beyond. We talk cosplay. I'm behind the scenes all the way. Trivia, behind the scenes, and continuity errors is my thing for the Skywalker saga and everything in between.
Sick.
Beautiful.
I love it.
Beautiful, my friend.
Yeah, and as we were saying, just a couple of notes on our upcoming episodes. So we've got a little bit of a break coming up over the next couple of weeks. We both had like a couple of things come up. So over the next few weeks, we have a little bit of a break. And what's happening is we'll be back for an episode on the... Let me just double check again. On the weekend of the 17th. So 16th if you're in LA, 17th if you're in Australia. Or the UK. So we'll be back around about then, and we've got about 4 episodes there that are going to wrap up our season finale. So we'll have 2 guests coming on, so 1 week after that, and then the last 2 episodes that'll wrap us up will be just some little wrap-up things before we look to take a bit of a break and come back season 3 with a bunch of new guests and a bunch of new films and kicking it off real strong. So yeah, we're really excited to have you.
Our second annual One with the Filmies. We're going to be very excited to present those, where we take people's recommendations, such as Chris's, and put them against each other. It's the most odd award show that you'll have there, where we create our own categories.
People are always asking why the Oscars like that. You know, why don't they matter anymore? Why are they irrelevant? If you want something more relevant, here's a bunch of films nobody's seen before, and we're going to pit them against one another. So.
Exactly. Listen, if you thought the Oscars were irrelevant, wait till you hear us.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, it's one of those things there where, don't worry, we got you. And so the totally relevant award show that everybody wants to pay attention to. But that is our show, guys. Thank you so much for coming by and spending a little bit of time with us. And as my dear friend Raglan says, gasoline would scare any linguist away.